By now, the royalists over in Chile were aware of the potential threat, but they had conflicting information about where the army was going to cross, so they were forced to significantly divide their forces to try and cover the 5 or 6 major passes along the length of the Andes. San Martin sent small detachments to act as diversions at a number of smaller crossing points further along the border, but with O'Higgins promoted as deputy commander, he marched the bulk of the army through 2 passes that would pincer around any enemy on the other side as they neared the capital of Santiago, which lay in the foothills. The crossing was as grueling as expected, with unpredictable blizzards, rock falls, and acclimatization challenges. The army was supplied with onions, garlic, and other foods thought by doctors at the time to minimize altitude sickness, and they moved as fast as circumstances permitted, passing first through dry, dusty river canyons, then dangerous red scree fields and granite cliffs, until they got above the snow line, where frostbite, altitude sickness, and cerebral edema were at their most dangerous. All the while, dragging 25 cannons over the second highest mountain range in the world. Finally crossing along narrow and slippery serpentine trails, they began their descent into the Chilean hinterland. A third of his soldiers had perished, mostly from frostbite or altitude sickness. Along with this number, he lost half his horses and mules. Devastating to be sure, but substantially less casualties over a dangerously higher mountain range, longer distance and time scale than Hannibal's attempts against Rome. Several of the other detachments also crossed in reasonable order, only to find the enemy had hurriedly moved on to intercept where they thought the main body of the army was going to be. His spies had done their job, with virtually all detachments descending over the mountains unopposed. These smaller battalions advanced quickly into the lowlands and easily took the lightly defended garrisons up and down the long Chilean coastline at Coquimbo, Copiapó, and Talca, where they cut off or delayed any enemy units travelling by road. The main force, also relatively unopposed, now made plans to attack Santiago in a pincer, surrounding the royalist forces who had marched out to meet them at a ranch called Chacabuco. The southern arm was delayed by difficult terrain and had arrived after San Martin's had already deployed, while O'Higgins, overcome with emotion and his usual Irish-Spanish impetuosity, charged his men straight for the defending line without seeking backup or artillery support. Seeing no alternative to covering the vulnerable flank of O'Higgins, San Martin sounded a general advance, and with the arrival of the southern pincer, the enemy was enveloped and routed by the early afternoon, with huge casualties for the defenders at the loss of only 12 patriots, who had managed to also secure artillery, caches of weapons and supplies. The few surviving royalists fled to the south of the country, where they would be harassed by the other battalions and head for royalist-held ports, hoping for reinforcements from the north. In the coming months, they would regroup and press north to endanger Santiago once more. But for now, San Martin and his army marched triumphantly into Santiago the following day, to huge celebrations from the people. They restored the previous caretaker government, which welcomed him as a liberator and offered him the supreme directorship. Ever the consummate soldier, for the second time and in another country, he again refused the title, insisting that under such historic circumstances, a Chilean citizen would be most appropriate as its first leader, proposing his subordinate and now close friend O'Higgins for the position, who was duly elected to that role. The army was by now low on supplies and there was little money left to pay his troops, so San Martin left O'Higgins in charge of the army while he travelled back to Buenos Aires to report to the government and negotiate for more funds to continue the campaign and push north into Peruvian territory. The whole point of San Martin's campaign was that he believed that the security of the United Provinces hinged largely on the neutralization of the Viceroyalty of Peru, which was the most militantly loyal of all the colonies and had the money and troops to lead a royalist reconquest from their strongholds in the west. If it could be taken, the United Provinces' rear would be secure, and they could focus all of their military attention to the east and more easily prevail over the Portuguese or royalist forces coming in from Spain. The government had long agreed with this assessment